Today we have a campfire question from Lori Jackson, who asks, what factors do you consider when choosing a campsite? Not the campground, but the specific site. I think we all have reasons for picking this or that site, but wondered what yours were.
Thanks for your question, Lori.
Yeah, this is a really good question. We came up with at least 9 factors that we consider when choosing a campsite. The first, hookups, of course. Is it full hookup, partial hookup, or no hookup?
And depending on where we are and what we're doing, we may choose different ones. I mean, if we're just passing through for a night, we may not need any hookups. Or we might just want water or a dump station. It just depends. If we're staying for 2 weeks, we might want full hookups.
It's funny because we talked to some people who only stay in full hookup campgrounds. There are sometimes when we might go weeks without staying in a full hookup campground. It's just the way we travel.
Like a month at a time sometimes.
Yeah, and we've gone that
we'll just
long
use the
between.
dump station and fill up our fresh water and not worry about it.
All right, so I have to do a shout out to Rocky's somewhere here on Highway 98 in Florida. I'm not even sure where we are, to be honest, but they have a nice little RV park and they have a free dump station for RV travelers. So that's pretty commendable in these days.
Next, privacy. We always really want maximum privacy if possible.
If there's a site that backs up to, a stream or a nice pasture or trees that's going to give us a nice little quiet place to sort of escape to, we're all about that.
Yeah, there have been times when we've been able to get sites kind of in the corner of the campground where they've been a little bit more secluded. I think privacy is one reason we personally prefer state parks and to an extent national parks over a lot of RV parks because a lot of RV parks just don't offer the privacy.
Yeah, they're on small plots of land and your neighbor is, an arm's length away from you. There have been times when we have been in our camper in a private RV park. If we've had our windows open, we could hear our neighbors inside their RV with their windows open having a conversation.
So this is what you go camping in a state park for. They'll walk right up to you.
The next option that we consider is proximity to amenities. If we are somewhere that has a nice lake or a beach or has a really nice pool, do we want to be close to those things? The other thing we think about is how close are we to the Wi-Fi tower, because that can be really important, especially for us working from the road. Sometimes it's how close you are to the bathhouse, if we're somewhere where we're going to want to use the bathhouse.
And I might point out there are times when you want to be far away from certain amenities.
Yes.
Like if you're in a park that's very busy and let's say has a really noisy pool area, then maybe you want to be as far away from that as you can get.
Right, or if it's at an RV park that has a huge playground and every kid from the RV park is there, you may not want to be next to the playground.
Where are you?
Hello. We're on the beach in Destin, Florida.
Next up would be view. Depending on the campground, sometimes you don't get much of a view. Sometimes you get a great view. You might have a river behind your camper or even an ocean. Obviously you're often going to pay for the view, but the view is a factor.
There's where we were. Perfect camping spot.
The next thing to consider is shade or no shade. If it is the middle of July and it is 100 degrees outside, we are probably looking for a nice shady spot. But if it's October and we're in Wyoming and it's 38 degrees outside, we might want a nice sunny spot.
We tend to prefer shade, but those of you who carry a lot of solar panels and solar equipment with you probably don't want too much shade. You want to be getting a lot of sunlight to juice your batteries and your solar system. Next, we might consider pavement, because we've been in some camping situations where some sites have a nice parking pad that's paved with asphalt or a nice concrete patio next to the campsite. Other sites are unpaved and they may just have a patch of gravel or they may just have grass. Sometimes the same campground will offer 2 different kinds of sites, and if you want to pay a little less, you could stay in the unpaved site. If the weather's good, that's typically not a big deal. If the weather is not good, then it could be muddy right outside your camper. We've stayed, for example, in the Orlando area in some private resorts, and we stayed very affordably going to Disney World from these resorts by staying in unpaved sites.
Sometimes it can really drastically reduce the price. So if you're in an environment where the ground isn't muddy and the grass is nice, then save yourself some cash. The next option that we consider, pull through versus back in. This really can depend on what we're doing. Are we passing through for a night? Then we're probably gonna do a pull through. If we're sticking around for 2 weeks, then we probably want to back in. We are never 100% have to have a pull through site, or never we have to have a back end site. We're usually flexible on that.
The issue here for us has to do with, do we have to unhitch our rig or can we stay hitched? I know a lot of people choose pull through sites because they just don't want to back into a back end site. We've done it so many times. Typically, it's not that stressful for us to back into a site. We're not worried about that. We are sometimes worried about being forced to unhitch our rig because then we have to re-hitch it, and that just requires a lot of effort.
Right, and especially like last year on our trip to Key West, we made a few stops in South Florida where we were literally just stopping through for a night, and we didn't want to have to unhitch. So I would call ahead and make sure that they had a pull-through site long enough, or even a back-end site long enough. We stayed in one RV resort where our site was back-end, and as long as it was long enough for us to not have to unhitch, we were a-okay with it.
Sometimes you can ask, do you have a really long back-end site? Because we'd like to grab that one.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll have like those big motorhome sites, and if nobody's staying in it, then they'll give it to you for the night, and that way you can back in and leave everything hitched and no worries.
Next, the length of availability. In other words, how long is the site available for us to stay there? You can stay in a lot of nice state parks without a reservation, but quite often you can't stay for very long in a particular site. They'll say, okay, we've got you 2 nights here in this site, and then you're gonna have to move to this other site across the park, and you could stay 2 nights there. When you really just want to stay 4 nights in this other site.
And sometimes it depends if it's somewhere that does take reservations and they've already got this site reserved and that site reserved, and so for you to stay the length of time you want to stay, you're going to have to move.
Pro tip, a lot of times you can negotiate discounts if you're going to stay a week or longer. So if you're calling to make reservations and you really want to stay in one place for a week, ask them up front, is there any kind of discount for a week stay?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll basically make you pay for 6 nights, you get the 7th night for free. And that brings us to our last point, which is price. And sometimes, a back-end site is cheaper than a pull-through site, even though the back-end site might have more privacy or more shade or that sort of thing. And sometimes the pull-through site might be cheaper because it's at the front of the park and there are no amenities there and there's more traffic that you'll hear. So it really just depends from park to park, but we always ask about price, and that will be related back to hookups. A full hookup site is always going to cost more than a partial or a no hookup site. So it just depends on what you're wanting to spend, what's in your budget. And again, on our trip last year in South Florida, we spent a lot of like 1 nights in RV parks. And so we didn't get full hookup. We would just get, water and power. And that way we save some money.
Almost every campground has a dump station. So, even if you don't have full hookups, you can take care of your water tanks either going in or going out of the campground.
Right.
And so you don't have to worry about that at your actual campsite.
Yeah, and that's especially something to think about if you're only staying somewhere for 1 or 2 or even 3 nights. Like, it may not be worth it to pay for a full hookup site if they have a dump station, because if you're like us, you're not going to fill up your tanks in 3 nights. It's whatever your preference is. You might be somebody that you have to have full hookup, you have to have a pull through.
Sorry guys, there were at least 9 factors we consider when choosing a campsite.
Yes.
What about you? In your experience, what do you value when you're picking a campsite? Chime in, post a comment, share your experience with our community.
If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. We hope that you are already subscribed, but if you have not subscribed to our channel yet, please click the little subscribe button down below. You can click that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you'll get alerted every time we post a new video and you'll never miss a fresh video. And what do we always say?
We say,
Hello.
Hey guys, Sean with Long Honeymoon here. We have traveled to Cambodia to put the legendary Hutzler 571 banana slicer through its paces. Here in Southeast Asia, banana slicer was invented some 1,000 years ago when the king commissioned his best scientists to design a device to slice small Cambodian bananas. Now in the modern times, bananas have grown much larger. We need better tools.